Today, we're going to journey deep into the misty Khasi Jaintia hills of northeast India. Because there's this ancient story there, one that's kind of whispered on the wind. It's a tale about a love that bridged two completely different worlds, a promise that was tragically broken, and, believe it or not, the unlikely birth of an entire kingdom.
So, picture this. We're going way, way back to a time so ancient it feels almost like a dream, you know? A time when the world itself felt brand new. Its history wasn't written down yet, and the landscapes were just wild and completely untamed.
This was a world that was just filled with the raw music of nature, right? You had the melody of the wind, the chorus of the birds, but this was before we, as humans, had learned to capture those sounds, put them into verses, or even give them names.
And the rivers? Well, they just carved their own paths through the earth. Their journeys were a secret, known only to the land itself. There were no maps to tame them. And it's in this primal, unwritten world that our story begins. So, in this world, in a little village called Sutunga, lived our hero, a young and pretty solitary shepherd named Woh Ryndi. Now, Woh Ryndi, he had this incredibly deep connection to the world around him. See, he was an orphan, so the whole village was basically his family, and the animals, well, they were his closest friends. The folklore actually describes him as having the calm eyes of the river and the warm skin of the Khasi earth. It's like he wasn't just a man living on the land, he was a part of the landscape itself. Simple, kind, and really deeply alone. And like in all great myths, right? It's always a single, totally ordinary moment that changes everything. For him, it happened one evening. He cast his fishing line into the river Waikairui, something he'd done 1,000 times before, but on this particular evening, fate had woven something extraordinary into the currents just below the surface. After a really fierce struggle, he pulls this fish from the water, but it was like nothing he had ever seen before. It was just radiant, silver. Its scales were gleaming like pure moonlight. This was a creature that honestly seemed like it didn't belong to the river, but maybe to the stars.
So, he's exhausted, right? He places this magnificent catch on a rack over the fire thinking, I'll cook that later. And then he just completely forgets about it. And you know, it's that one simple act of forgetfulness that ends up being the hinge that his entire world is about to turn on.
So, night after night, Woh Ryndi comes back from the fields, and his quiet, humble hut is transformed. The floors are swept, the cooking pots are clean, and there's this strange sense of peace in the air. It was obvious that something or someone had been there.
I mean, he was totally mystified. Who was this silent, helpful spirit? The suspense was just too much, so he comes up with a plan. One morning, instead of going out to the fields like usual, he hides himself nearby, determined to finally figure out what was going on.
And what he saw, it was just beyond belief. A soft mist started to rise from the basket where he'd put that silver fish. It swirled and gathered, and then, slowly, it took the form of this radiant, ethereal maiden. Her whole presence was otherworldly, and her movements, they were as graceful as flowing water. Just incredible.
He's just stunned, right? He steps out from his hiding place. And the maiden, she introduces herself. She says her name is Li Dakha, and she's a daughter of the river spirit. She explains that because he forgot to cook her, it was this unwitting act of mercy, a moment of grace, really, that allowed her to shed her fish form and actually walk in his world.
And just like that, a whole new chapter began. The lonely shepherd, well, he wasn't alone anymore. The son of the earth and the daughter of the water were finally together.
Their home was apparently filled with love and laughter. They even had children, and for a while, it seemed like their two worlds had perfectly merged into one. But even in all that happiness, there was this underlying tension. You see, Li Dakha was never entirely of his world, and the river, well, it never stopped calling to its daughter.
So this happiness they had, it was really fragile. When Woh Ryndi insisted they go visit his relatives, she reluctantly agreed, but she gave him a very serious warning. She laid out this one specific rule. If, during their visit, she saw a broomstick on a veranda, that was it. The magic binding her to his world would shatter, and she'd be forced to return to her father's river, forever. I mean, what a strange, specific taboo, right? But their entire future now rested on it.
And of course, Woh Ryndi promised. Of course he did. But you know how it is. In the joy and chaos of a big family gathering, it's so easy for a small but crucial detail to just get overlooked.
And there it was. A simple, forgotten broom just leaning against the wall of the veranda. The second Li Dakha saw it, her smile vanished, the air grew cold, the promise was broken. Just like that.
Without a single word, she just bolted from the house. In that split second, Woh Ryndi understood his catastrophic mistake, and he just takes off after her, shouting her name into the wind. The story says her hair streamed behind her like black fire as she ran for the only sanctuary she had left, the river Waikiroi.
He manages to catch up to her, but he's right at the river's edge, and it's too late. With eyes just full of sorrow and love, she tells him the bond is broken. And with those final, just heartbreaking words, she leaps into the water and was gone.
So Woh Ryndi was alone again, his entire world shattered by one careless moment.